The presentation that you'll be seeing today is from an organization called Be Nice. We've partnered with a mental health foundation out of Michigan. And, my CEO just knew this woman through mutual friends, family friends, and she took time this past summer to travel to Houston, train our entire staff in this program. So we feel very lucky that we even have this information. This is like a world-renowned organization out of Michigan that, we feel very lucky to have here in Houston. And so I'm also going around to schools and talking to students about mental health, starting as young as kindergarten. We'll talk about how to be nice to each other, how to treat each other with respect. We'll go over bullying scenarios. And then as we work our way up to the 12th graders, we start talking about the depression and anxiety and what that might look like, and having these really awesome conversations with students about what they're experiencing, the stressors in their life that they're experiencing. So that's what we're going to go over today. I just kind of want to briefly tell you a little bit about myself and what I do for Crime Stoppers. So I'm the manager of the Safe School program. I've been at Crime Stoppers for almost 2 years now. I would say my day-to-day is just working with students. I usually go around to different campuses and talk to kids, again, ranging from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. We have cyber safety initiatives, human trafficking initiatives, teen dating and sexual misconduct, drug and alcohol prevention, domestic violence. I mean, the list just goes on. And I've been able to have such amazing conversations with kids of just about their struggles. And when I talk to kids, you guys, it's preventative. So every presentation I give to a student, I'm not introducing topics to them. It's, if an online predator was to talk to you, how do you handle that? Or if you're being cyberbullied, how do we handle that? And so we go over a lot of those preventative measures. This is the parents' version of our Be Nice program, so it's kind of like an insider's guide. We're going to learn a lot about mental health, and a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about today isn't easy, I will say that. I've only presented this to parents a handful of times, just because schools, can be a little bit they don't always love talking about mental health, so I really love when schools take that initiative to actually step up and talk about it. So please ask as many questions as you would like. Hopefully I can give you all the answers, and I just want to have a really awesome and open discussion with you guys today. Oh, I'm from Houston, by the way. I grew up here. I am a native Houstonian. I went to Kincaid from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, and then went to UT in Austin and came back here. I haven't traveled very far. So I love Houston, and I love working with people that, I grew up with, and continue to foster those relationships. All right, so let's talk about it. The Be Nice initiative has 4 different words that we kind of stick with throughout the program. It's to notice, invite, challenge, and empower. And that's kind of the lesson plan that we're going to go over today. So Be Nice is a mental health education, bullying, and suicide prevention action plan that creates a positive and transformative culture change through simple daily actions. That is their mission statement. And so I usually don't, the PowerPoint presentations that we give at Crime Stoppers, I typically don't read a lot off the screen, but this is their presentation, and I'm not going to botch it, so I'm going to really try to give all of the information that they have trained us on to you guys. We like to call it the stop, drop, and roll of mental illness is the Be Nice action plan. So when I go to schools, I bring this poster, and we have Be Nice written out, and we talk about noticing, inviting, and challenging, and empowering, because for kids, you guys, they hear that term all the time. Be nice. You might tell your kids, don't forget to be nice to your sister, be nice to your brother. And when students hear that over and over and over again, it tends to just lose its meaning a little bit. And I had that growing up. My mom would always tell me, Jenna, don't forget to be nice to your sister, be nice to your new friends, invite people to sit with you. And then you don't want that word nice losing its meaning. So when you tie notice, invite, challenge, and empower with that word, it really brings a new meaning. It has brought a new meaning to me. And every time I hear the word nice, I think of the Be Nice action plan and what that means, and how I can incorporate this into my daily routine as an adult. And it really helps us take a step back and think about how we're treating each other. All right, so here are some facts that I'm going to give you guys. Mental illness is the leading cause of disability in the United States. It's interesting because when we go and talk about mental health with kids, what we like to describe mental illness as is how you think, how you act, and how you feel. how someone lives, how someone laughs, and how someone loves. We like to kind of break it down for kids in that way because it makes them think a little bit more about mental illness. I'll ask students all the time, you guys, when you talk about mental health, what does that mean to you? And we have little kids that say it means when you're crazy. Or we have, older kids that start to get it and say, it's how you act in stressful situations. So it's cool just to kind of see that shift, and when these young kids hear the term mental health and how the older kids do, what that means to them, but we always bring it back to how you think, how you act, and how you feel. Suicide is the 10th leading cause in the US and the 2nd leading cause of death for young people aged 10 to 34. You guys, talking about suicide is not easy. And we will talk about that today. Kids, when I go out and present to students, and suicide comes up a lot with cyber safety presentations that I give, because we'll go over, the predatory activity, inappropriate information. But at the very end, we talk about bullying. We talk about cyberbullying, and I say, guys, why shouldn't you cyberbully someone? Just to kind of get the conversation started. And I see kids as young as like 3rd, 4th grade say, so someone doesn't commit suicide. They'll say that, and I don't know if they know what they're actually talking about, but they know that word. They're very aware, you guys. Students are seeing things at a really young age, the exposure, what's on YouTube, what they just hear from their friends. Are maturing at an extremely fast rate, and they know what this word is, and so don't be alarmed if your child ever comes home and wants to talk to you about it. It's kind of unfortunately normal that they're hearing that at a really young age. And also, guys, in 2016, the suicide rates just skyrocketed tenfold because of a lot of the stuff that's going on online with teenagers and what they're seeing and the expectations that they feel like they have to fulfill, and the cyberbullying. So I have a lot of information to give with that as well, so I'll try to incorporate that into the presentation today. This one's interesting to me as well. 3 to 5% of girls have a diagnosable eating disorder. The youngest age diagnosed slipping to 9 years old in recent years. So we see like the eating disorder side of this, the mental health, it's all different for ages, for genders, etc. Coming from my side, coming from Crime Stoppers, you guys, when we study mental health when it comes to cyber safety, we're actually seeing students, the behavioral psychologists, they do the study and I just attend the trainings and I give the information back to you guys, but they're actually seeing that kids are now viewing pornography for the first time as young as 9 years old. Viewing like for the first time by 9, not because they're actively looking for it, because of what people pump out and put on the internet. There's a lot of inappropriate information that's embedded everywhere, and it really starts affecting how your child's brain is developing. It affects their mental health. It affects the way that they think, act, and love and feel. And so it's really important we talk about this, and I again just thank you guys so much that you came out today. All right, you guys, I just want y'all to know what mental illness actually is. A mental disorder or mental illness is diagnosable. It affects a person's thinking, emotional state, and behavior for 2 weeks or longer, disrupts the person's ability to work or attend school, carry out daily activities, and engage in satisfying relationships. I like that. I like that we can break it down to kind of what this looks like. And one thing I do want to point out, you guys, is 2 weeks or longer. Okay, so think about your child. Your child is going to go through stressful situations in their lifetime. Things as simple as a project that really stresses them out, or a sports game that really stresses them out. So in that stressful time period where they're trying to finish that project, or they have that big sports game coming up, they might actually show signs of mental illness. They might experience that anxiety and the not sleeping, not being able to carry out daily activities, distancing themselves. But once that stressful life event is over, once they've turned in that project, once that sports game's over, those signs and symptoms should go away. That's normal. You experience those signs and symptoms during that stressful situation, then they go away after. If they linger, if they last more than 2 weeks, so your kid is kind of over that stressful event and they're kind of getting back to their daily life and daily routine, but they're still exhibiting these signs and symptoms, that's when we got to start worrying. And so that's what I always tell students when we talk about mental health. I said, don't beat yourself up. If you're anxious, if you are not sleeping and you can't eat and you just aren't feeling like yourself, that's okay. That's normal. We have to push that to them, that it's normal to feel that way. But when those feelings linger is when I want you to reach out to somebody and ask for help. Tell your parents they've been feeling this way for a long time, or tell a school counselor. Also, you guys, we always relay this back to actual like brain development and brain activity, okay? Mental illness really is something that's part of the brain, and a lot of people don't think that. They think like you choose this, like you can choose to be depressed or not, and you really can't. It's all in our brain. So if you look at this picture right here, this will show, this scan on the left shows a lot of brain activity, and this shows about 0. So, well, not 0, just very minimal. I'm sorry. This one right here, you guys, is what people who are struggling with depression and anxiety, their brain looks like a lot. They don't have all that brain activity that everyone else does. So basically, I can explain it right here. It says, the intensity of health brain activity can be measured by the colors that you see. The most activity is red, followed by yellow, green, and finally blue. A depressed brain is in a very low activity state, almost like hibernation. So it's like your brain is falling asleep. You can see why mental health concentration is not very good in someone who's depressed. It's like really hard to study their brain and see what's going on, but you can just see by a simple brain scan how that truly affects our day-to-day tasks. So here are some mental illnesses that I just want to make sure that y'all are aware of: ADD, ADHD, anxiety disorder, bipolar disorder, depression, eating disorders, substance use disorders, and schizophrenia, just to name a few. Oops. Okay, mental illness can be more disabling than many chronic physical illnesses. For example, a disability refers to the amount of disruption of a health problem causes a person's ability to, again, work and attend school, carry out daily activities, engage in satisfying relationships. We want our students to be able to do those every single day. And when they're struggling with mental illness and they're struggling with their mental health, that's going to be really, really hard for them. Physical disabilities are extremely hard as well. I would never say that they're not, but when your brain activity and your brain function is so diminished that you can't do that simple daily stuff is when we really have to start worrying and start talking to our kids, you guys. My biggest thing is just talk to your kids. I need you guys to notice when they're changing, and we're going to go over the notice part of the action plan in just a second, but never stop talking to them. What's the first thing that you ask your kid when they get in the car after school? How was your day, right? That's what my mom asked me every single day when I got picked up from school before I drove myself. And, you know, how was your day? And what happens is when you ask that same question every single day, what are the responses that you get back? Fine, good. And then they get on their cell phone and they bury their heads in their cell phone and they don't talk to you, right? So switch it up on them, you guys. I cannot stress this enough how much you will find out about your kid when you just ask a different question. So instead of saying, how was your day? You can say, what was something that made you happy today? What was something that you learned today? Where any of your friends sat at school today? What's something your friend is struggling with? If they can talk about their friends, they have empathy skills, which is incredible. And that's amazing for brain development. And it shows that they have that brain activity. They can carry out daily activities. So just talk to them in a different way, switch up what you say. You know, they have to be in the car with you for 20 minutes on the ride home. So just force those questions and try to get to know your kid a little bit better. All right, so going over the action plan again, it's to notice, invite, challenge, and empower. So we're going to go over each step today, and it doesn't take very long, but we want to be able to tie all of these messages together to kind of create this cohesive idea of what being nice means. All right, so when we talk about noticing, we want to talk about what is right, what is good, and what is different. Those are the three things that I want you to remember. When people, you know, we want to notice what is right when people say or do something positive. When you have done something positive, congratulate yourself. What is going well around you and call attention to it. When you're thinking about what is good, let no act of kindness go unrecognized. Go out of your way to find something good about everyone you meet. What is different? If you notice changes in someone's mood or behavior. This is what I like to focus on though, is what is different. When I go out and I talk to students about the notice part of our Be Nice action plan, I always stress this, guys. Your kid knows themselves very well. I know how I act in stressful situations. I know how I act in every daily life. If all of a sudden I notice within myself that I'm changing, you know, I'm not dealing with stress very well, I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating, I have loss of appetite, I don't like to do the things that make me happy anymore. I need to be able to be self-aware enough to notice that within myself and then speak up. But I also want to or just teach your kids how to notice things about their friends. It is so easy to pick up on when someone is sad or upset about something, so that noticing factor is huge. And so we have to just be very observant of ourselves and of our people that we're surrounding ourselves with. All right, so we want to talk about signs and symptoms of depression. Basically, notice any changes in a person's behavior. Notice when you or others are not feeling well, both physically and mentally. So if someone uses words like I'm super stressed, or I'm depressed, or I'm anxious. Notice and familiarize yourself with risk factors for depression and other illnesses. Students overuse these words a lot. It's really easy, and I think our society has, unfortunately, you hear students and people who just say, oh, I have so much anxiety. I'm so anxious all the time. And they don't actually really know what that means. And it's really hard for people who actually are diagnosed with anxiety to hear everyone else in the world say that they're anxious all the time if they've never been diagnosed with it. So we don't want to overuse these words, but if you hear your kids use them all the time, like they're always talking about how stressed they are. They say, I'm depressed, without actually knowing what that is. It would raise a little bit of a red flag. We want to ask, when you say you're depressed, what are you actually feeling? And see how they can elaborate on those feelings. Explain if they feel really tired all the time, loss of interest in activities, not eating, etc. All right, so again, signs and symptoms. There's a lot here, but I'll just kind of read some off for you guys of depression: sadness, anxiety, guilt, anger, mood swings, lack of emotional responsiveness, feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, and irritability. This is really big for students right here, is that frequent self-criticism. If they feel like nothing they're doing is good enough or okay, if they're self-blaming, if they have memory loss, indecisiveness, confusion, tendency to believe others really easily, or see people in a negative light, thoughts of death and suicide. Those would all be signs and symptoms of depression. And that's a lot, and it's usually not going to be all of them. It's not all of them wrapped into one. They might just experience a couple, but these are those things that you need to notice within your kid if they are acting a little bit differently. So risk factors for developing depression. I don't like talking about risk factors. I don't know why, and I'm not a mental health professional, so I think that's why. I'm just not fully trained in the mental health world. But when I talk about risk factors, especially with students, you guys, it makes them feel bad because they're saying, oh, if I check every one of these boxes, does that mean I'm going to be depressed? And it's like, no. It's just if you've been exposed to this before, you might be more at risk for developing depression later on. So I have to be able to explain that to them. But sometimes with kids, they get really nervous. But if anyone's ever been exposed to stressful life events, abuse or trauma, they might be more at risk for developing depression. Difficulty of like an abusive childhood, ongoing stress and anxiety, medical conditions and hormonal changes, side effects of medication, illness that is life-threatening, chronic, or associated with pain, and then brain injury. This is hard because a lot of people have stressful life events, and everyone categorizes stressful life events differently. So like one student can say, my biggest stressful life event was when my house was flooded in Harvey. Or someone might say that my biggest stressful life event was when, I didn't get an Xbox for Christmas. We have very different stressful life events for very different kids, but we can't take that away from how they feel. If that's how they feel, that's how they feel. Talk to them about why they feel like that is so stressful, why they're experiencing that trauma. We did see a lot of students with the Harvey floods who were experiencing a lot of trauma for the very first time, and it really was affecting their mental health, how they were carrying out their daily tasks, how they were fitting in at school, having to readjust. So during that time period, we were going in and doing a lot of talks and coping skills and working with these students. But again, think about the past stuff that your kid has experienced and how that's affected them. You guys, y'all's brains are developed. I want to remind you of that. So you're adults, your brains are fully developed. By the time you turn 25, scientists and experts will say your brain is fully developed. Your kids' brains are not developed yet. So things that are stressful to you, but you can actually handle, that's a different story. If you and your kid is experiencing the same stressful life event, you might be able to handle it 10 times better than they will because their brain's not fully developed yet. They don't have the right kind of coping skills. Their frontal lobe and their decision-making processes just really aren't there yet. So remember that. Always put yourself in your child's shoes and just know that the way that they handle these stressful life events will be a lot different than you. Other risk factors: previous episode of mental illness, family history, just genetics will always be a risk factor, learned behavior from someone at home, chemical imbalance in the brain, substance misuse, and seasonal changes, which you think is strange but really can affect someone, and environmental factors. The good thing in Houston is we don't have very many seasonal changes. It's just hot and cold, up and down all the time, but just especially because this comes out of Michigan, and like the temperate changes there, I mean, they experience a lot when transitioning from, you know, fall to summer and spring with these kids, and how they react to that, which is really fascinating. Again, I'm not a mental health professional, but hearing about it is truly fascinating. All right, so top stressors for kids are typically heavy school workload, learning disabilities, balancing academics, relationship drama always, family conflicts, maybe someone's going through a divorce or they are raised in single parent households, just siblings can always be stressful, language barriers, changing schools if your kid moves a lot, if you have a job that takes you from place to place to place, and just a constant stressor like bullying. I mean, guys, when we talk about bullying, what I really want y'all to remember is how different bullying is today than the bullying that you experienced. If y'all are being bullied at school, at least when you left school, you escaped your bully. You got to go home, and maybe they didn't live in your neighborhood, so it was like a win-win situation. I mean, it was horrible when you were at school, but then when you left, you were okay. You had that moment of relief. You could like literally just sigh and let it out. Kids today, you guys, if they're being bullied, it is 24/7 because they have their phone. Someone can reach them at all times. It's ongoing and constant. And I hear from students every single day what they're going through. I've experienced cyberbullying, bullying before, absolutely, but the social media platforms that I was on when I was growing up is completely different than what your kids are on today. I was on MySpace, and you know, the stuff that happened on MySpace is nothing like happening on Instagram and Snapchat and all the stuff that they experience on a day-to-day basis. So when your kid talks about what's happening to them in the bullying situations, please open your hearts, please open your minds. I know you cannot equate your personal experience to theirs because it's nowhere near similar, but you have to be empathetic to what they're going through. It honestly, you guys, crushes me when I go and talk to parents about cyber safety, and we talk about a lot of these bullying situations, and I have parents in the audience that tell me that bullying builds character, and I have to like be as professional as I can to not like say, what are you saying? But listen, you guys, maybe the bullying that y'all experienced, maybe, I can't say that because it was y'all's experience, but bullying does not build character. It's hard. And these kids are really, really, really struggling. I would say conflict and conflict resolution builds character, but not bullying situations. All right, also you guys, I want to give you the definitions of rude, mean, and bullying, because we also hear those words used way too often. We have students say, oh, she's being so mean to me, she's being so rude to me, they're bullying me, but they don't actually know what these words mean. So when you're rude, you're just inadvertently saying something or doing something that hurts someone. You didn't really like purposefully hurt their feelings. If someone was rude to you, it could have just been, a comment that was taken the wrong way, but that's usually how we want to use the word rude. Mean is when someone is purposefully saying or doing something to hurt someone else. Okay, so that's the difference between rude and mean. And usually if someone's mean to you, it happens like once or maybe twice. But then if someone's bullying y'all, this is the difference, okay? It's the imbalance of power, and it's repeated over time. Please stress that to your kids, you guys. When your kid comes home from school and says, I'm being bullied, I need you to ask a lot of questions. How many times has this person been mean or rude to you? Do they make you feel less than them? What are they doing to you? You have to ask these questions, because I've had kids that have come up to me and said, Miss Jenna, I'm being bullied at school. And I say, oh, I'm so sorry. Please tell me about what's going on. And they said, well, yesterday Sally pushed me over at recess. I said, does this happen every single day, or did it happen just yesterday? Just yesterday. And I have to be able to explain to this, student whose feelings have been really hurt that that's not bullying, not yet. And so I say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. What she did, Sally pushing you over, does not excuse her actions, but that's conflict. You're arguing with somebody, and if that happens every single day and it's repeated over time, then you got a bullying situation on your hands. And so that you just have to be able to explain that to them, y'all, because we have parents, and I don't want to call y'all out, but we have parents that come to counselors all the time and say, my child is being bullied, because that's what they hear from their kid. but you've got to ask your kid what's actually going on. We cannot overuse this word, you guys, because now bullying is losing its meaning. Okay, this is a serious issue that's happening at schools, but we need to get down to the bottom of what's actually going on with your kids. All right, so that was the notice part, you guys, is just noticing those signs and symptoms, noticing changes within your kid, and noticing those top stressors. I know that schoolwork is always going to be a stressor. It's a stressor from the minute you get homework in like the 3rd and 4th grade to when you're going through college. It's never fun, but if their schoolwork is literally taking away every ounce of just like the happiness and the like that youthful joy that they have, and they can't hang out with their friends and they get so stressed, like we really want to talk to them about that as well. So now let's go over the invite side of this. Inviting involves taking a risk and reaching out. Invite yourself to say something and to start a conversation. Invite yourself to tell the individual specifically what you have noticed that makes you concerned about them. You guys, I ask students all the time, when you're sad, do your parents ask you why you're feeling that way? I say half will say yes, half will say no. Sometimes just by talking to you guys and getting to know parents a little bit better today, there's a lot of parents that are very nervous about starting that conversation. How do I talk to my kid about, those changes that I've seen in them? I don't want them to get mad at me. I don't want them to push me away. So y'all try to find that happy medium balance of not prying too much, but being there for them. You guys, you're their parent, okay? And at the end of the day, I know they get annoyed of you, but they love you a lot. And it means so much to them when you go out of your way to walk into the room and say, I've noticed that you've been feeling X, Y, and Z, and I'm concerned about you, and I want to talk to you. And they might not be open immediately, but the fact that you just open the door to that conversation is a game changer. Please invite yourself to talk to them about the stuff that you've noticed. It is so simple. Using I statements is really important. We'll get to that in a second. And then invite yourself to listen non-judgmentally. I'm going to say it again. Please be non-judgmental when you're talking to your kids, because your kids are going to say stuff to you and you're going to look at them like they are crazy people, and you are going to judge what they're saying, okay? Because they're kids and their brains are not fully developed, and sometimes things they say are crazy. But you guys, when they see those judgy eyes looking back at them, they're probably not going to open up to you again. So I need you to be very calm, cool, and collected while you're listening. Patience is a virtue. So when they're talking to you about what's going on at school, instead of interrupting them every 5 seconds and trying to fix the situation, listen to their full and complete story. Then you interject and you tell them that you're sorry that happened to them, and let's figure out a way to solve this. Instead of saying, well, you shouldn't have done this and they shouldn't have done this, that's when the judginess comes in and they tend to shut down. All right, you guys, so invite yourself to start the conversation. Begin by just telling the person that you feel concerned. It's very simple. Just tell someone that you feel concerned about them. Tell them specifically what they have said, what they have done or written that makes you concerned about them. So when we use I statements, it's as simple as this. I've noticed that. How long have you been feeling this way? Have you talked to anyone about how you're feeling? Is there anyone or anything that has helped you in the past? But instead of saying, we can structure our sentences differently. So when you say things like, you've been acting crazy recently, now that sounds accusatory and judgy. But when you say, I've noticed that you've been changing your patterns of behavior, look how different that sentence is just by changing the structure. And that will really get to your kid a little bit more. So try to practice using these I statements instead of automatically going to, the words like crazy or sad or disruptive, and just try to figure out the best way to come to them with that information. A lot of parents have told me in the past that they find things a lot on their phones. So like when you say written, it's more like typed. But things that they've typed to their friends, things that if any of your kids have like a journal, I highly recommend looking through that. I know sounds a little invasive, but they do live under your roof and you're legally responsible for them, and they're your child and you want to make sure that they're healthy and happy. So if you do see concerning text messages or journal entries or anything like that, please tell them that you're concerned about what you've seen. All right, so we want to be a good listener. We want to be comfortable with eye contact, even if they aren't. There's so many kids, you guys, when I talk to them, they are brave enough to come talk to me after presentations, but then when they come talk to me and they're standing right here, they look like past me. They don't like looking in my eye. But when I'm talking to them, I'll look at them in the eye. I have no problem with that, but I want to make sure that they know that I care. So if I'm talking to them and I'm, inadvertently like not looking at them, it makes them kind of think that I don't really care, or they're wasting my time, or I'm annoyed of them. So I always make direct eye contact, even if they're not. Be patient. Silence is a gift. So again, when they're talking to you and they're telling you exactly how they feel, the bullying situation that they just experienced, please listen to their full story before you butt in. Be empathetic. Be willing to let them tell their story. Their experience is their own. That's how they feel. Even if you think that their feelings are not normal, that is how they feel. Be okay, parents, and I see this all the time because I do a lot of parent and student like combination presentations too, which is really fun. And I will watch this where a kid will raise their hand, which is awesome because they're brave enough to talk in front of everyone. So they raise their hand and they start talking, and their parent sitting next to them will start correcting how they're asking that question. You guys, that is how they want to ask the question. That is how they feel. That is their wording. And when you're constantly interrupting them and correcting them, guess what? That self-criticism and self-blame starts coming in. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not smart enough. And my dad's always, correcting me. So try really hard just to remember that as they're developing, this is how they feel. This is how they want to describe things. And if it doesn't really make sense, maybe when you get home, you can talk to them about it. But when you kind of embarrass them in front of people and correct them in front of people, and I'm like, okay, then that can be your point person. Like sometimes, and parents hate hearing this, you guys, but a lot of kids, parents might not be their person. I want y'all to be your kids' people for sure. When I grew up, my parent was my person. My parents are my people. They're still my people. They're my best friends, and I got extremely, extremely lucky. But sometimes parents are just not their kid. Like your kids, y'all are not their people, and it's hard. And but I want your kid to talk to somebody, and so I do push that. I always say, if you don't feel comfortable talking to your parents, please talk to somebody else, because the more they keep it inside, it's just going to build up and build up and build up, and I don't want that for them. All right, so we went through notice, we went through invite, and now let's talk about the challenge aspect of this. Really, it's about challenging the stigma of mental health. Challenge yourself to act. If you've invited yourself to think, I want you to also think of ways you can make a difference. So you invite yourself, but then it's time to actually make action with what's happening here. How are we actually going to help your child? Challenge yourself to reach out to a mental health professional. Challenge others to be inclusive. Challenge others to stop negative behaviors towards themselves and others. So the challenge part is almost like the reinforcement piece of this. Like, you know that you're supposed to notice, you know that you're supposed to invite yourself to talk about it, but you have to challenge yourself to actually do it. We always know the right thing to do. It's just if we're actually willing to do it or not. So that's really the challenge piece of this. Challenge yourself to ask more questions if you are concerned. These are just really good questions to ask, and we've mentioned them already, but how long have you been feeling this way? Have you talked to anyone about how you are feeling? Is there anyone or anything that helped you in the past? Really, really simple questions that you can talk to your kids about with mental health. Challenge the individual to seek help, and then challenge the stigma they may have. I talk about counseling a lot in a lot of presentations. I have students that say, going to your counselor is like lame, or I don't want to talk to, somebody outside of school, that's for weak people. Like, where did you learn that? At home? So you guys listen, talking to someone is not a weak thing. You do not have to have a mental illness to go seek help. Everyone can use counseling every once in a while. It's really good to talk to someone who's objective and who doesn't know you personally, and you can just get things off your chest. So if your kid ever comes to you and says, hey mom or dad, I want to go see the school counselor, I want to talk to someone outside of school, that's really amazing that they have taken the initiative to actually want to do that. I want you to be thankful that they want to seek help and not keep things in. I started going to counseling when I was in 7th grade, and I never stopped. You guys, when I was in college, and happy as could be, loved college, but college is stressful, growing up is stressful, and sometimes it's really nice to be able to go talk to someone once a week about what's going on. Even if you had an amazing week, I want to tell someone about it, and I want to be able to get that off my chest without feeling like I'm bragging or I'm talking about myself too much. So counseling can be a really, really good outlet for your kids. All right, so types of professionals to suggest to someone to talk to: a doctor, a psychiatrist, social worker, counselor, any other mental health professional. Each individual will respond differently to treatment in just different ways. So there's talk therapies, there's medication, there's other professional supports. One thing that I really liked growing up was mindfulness techniques within counseling. My school growing up, they just had mindfulness classes that we could take, and in the mornings we could come to school early for 30 minutes and go through a whole mindfulness session. And so I was going into school day feeling really relaxed and really open to what was happening. So if your kid wants counseling, just kind of talk to them about what they're going to like the best. Do they want a mindfulness class? Do they want someone just to talk to? What kind of therapy are they looking for? So just continue to ask those questions and dig a little bit deeper. All right, we want to be able to see when someone might be in a crisis. You guys, we have the ability to notice when someone might be in a crisis situation, if someone is experiencing those suicidal thoughts and behaviors, if they're participating in self-harm, if they're at risk for even maybe just harming others. I'll never forget this. I was like a month into my job at Crime Stoppers, and I'm driving all over the city of Houston, and I grew up very much in a bubble here in Houston, and now I'm in 31 school districts, and I meet new kids and teachers and counselors every single day. It's incredibly rewarding. But I was at a campus, and the one thing I'll say about this campus is they don't have much support there when it came to their staff. The staff really, I feel like, just came up to show up and teach for 7 hours and leave. The support aspect of making sure their students felt secure at school and just supported in general, it wasn't really there. So that was hard for me. And I had a girl come up to me during a presentation, and it was cold outside, and so she was wearing like a sweatshirt, and then she pulled up her sweatshirt, and she had bandages all around her arms because she had been participating in self-harm, and she was cutting herself. I was the first person she told, and I again, it's shocking, but I never jumped to any sort of judgment. I didn't blame her or make her feel shamed about what she was doing. I just started asking questions. I said, how long have you been feeling this way? What makes you want to do that to your body? Is there something in the past that has happened to you? And it was just word vomit. You guys, things just came out. Like she started bawling, crying, and I asked her, I said, who do you like talking to at this school? She said, that teacher right over there. So I got her connected to the teacher, and I went down to the counselor's office and told them what happened, and we were able to get her some help. But sometimes it just takes asking the right kinds of questions. Because I think if I would have been like, oh my goodness, what are you doing to yourself? What are you thinking? And been accusatory and blaming and judgy, she might have shut down and run away from me. But I tried to handle the situation as calmly as I potentially could have. Looking back, I'm sure I could have changed a lot of things that I said. I was very, very new at what I was doing. But again, that question wording goes a really long way. All right, so here are some stats, you guys, just about what a lot of these kids are experiencing in crisis situations. Almost 1 in every teen has had a thought about suicide. About 1 in 6 teens had made plans for suicide. More than 1 in 12 teens has actually attempted suicide in the last year. And as many as 8 out of 10 teens who die by suicide try to ask for help in some way before actually committing suicide, such as seeing a doctor shortly before the suicide attempt. You guys, listen for key words in your kids. If your kids ever come to you and say, I don't want to be here anymore, or I can't do this anymore, I'm giving up, I'm over it, and it could be as simple as that, I really need you to start asking more questions. I've definitely, in the past, growing up in high school and college, said, oh, I just can't do this anymore. That comes out of your mouth, but and you don't mean anything by it. So that could absolutely happen. But then just ask, hey, when you say you can't do this anymore, what can't you do anymore? Are you feeling okay? And just, again, very, very simple questions, but you have to dig a little bit deeper if you hear those kinds of sentences come out of your child's mouth. Because again, what parents do, unfortunately, after their child has lost their life, is they always look back and they think about, oh, when he came into the kitchen or when she came in the kitchen to talk to me about how they were feeling and they're asking for help, but I was too busy washing the dishes and I didn't hear them and take time to ask how they were feeling, that was them asking for help. It's like the simplest things, you guys, and I know y'all are busy. I know you have your own personal lives. Being a parent is really hard. Being a working parent is really hard, and just balancing everything and giving enough time to your job, giving enough time to your kid. But the minute your child shows some interest to talk to you and want to express how they feel, you drop everything that you are doing. Okay? If it's an important phone call, you say, "Can I please call you right back?" And listen to your child. Please, please, please be there for them. Okay, so we want to notice some risk factors for suicide. Prior suicide attempts, family history of mental disorder, family history of suicide, family violence, including physical or sexual abuse, firearms in the home, the method used in more than half of suicides, and incarceration. Okay, you guys, the whole thing about firearms in homes, we live in Texas, we have a lot of guns here. My fiance's family, they're big hunters, and they always grew up with guns in the home. My family, not so much. My mom's from St. Louis, and it's just a little bit different. But the thing is, especially with my fiance's family, like the minute that he was old enough to know what a firearm was, there were very, very, very strict rules about where these firearms were kept. You're not allowed to go in there. They were locked and there's very, very, very strict rules. So if you are, raising your kid in the house with firearms, totally none of my business and totally fine. But make sure we talk to them about firearm safety. That is a really, really big thing, because you hear about those horrible, accidents that happen just with guns, into people know where to find them and they know that they can use it. Challenge to notice warning signs of suicide. So if anyone is feeling this intense emotional distress involving depression, anger, anxiety, hopelessness, worthlessness, inability to change frustrating circumstances or to find a solution to their problems. That's big, you guys, is that when these kids have so many buildup of problems that they're facing, and they feel like there's no way that they can fix them. It's like they've come to a dead end. That's what a lot of mental health professionals will describe it as kids get to this point where they just feel like there's nothing to live more for. I've had all these problems, they never go away, they just get worse and worse, they cannot find solutions, I'm at a dead end. So maybe it's just worth taking my own life so I don't have to live with this anymore, I don't have to deal with this anymore. Warning signs of suicide: if someone is just threatening to hurt or kill oneself. Y'all, kids are very vocal, and they'll say, "I'm going to kill myself." Like, kids will say that out loud, and a lot of parents just think that they're being dramatic, which maybe they could be, but if your kid ever says that sentence out loud, you do not leave them alone. Okay? You make sure they're okay, you check on them a lot. Seeking access to just means in general of finding ways to hurt themselves, talking or writing about death or suicide. If they describe that feeling and feeling hopeless a lot, feeling worthless or lack of purpose, acting recklessly or engaging in risky activities, feeling trapped, increasing alcohol and drug use, withdrawing from family and friends and society, demonstrating rage or anger, seeking revenge, if they're agitated or they just have a dramatic change in their mood. So these would all be some warning signs, and feel free to take any pictures if you would like, you guys. I do want to just quickly share, this is just so that y'all can just know me a little bit more and just know that this happens all the time. Not all the time, but it happens to people that you wouldn't really think. I've lost 2 friends in the past 2.5 years to suicide, and you always grow up thinking that like you would never experience this, and you hear about people that do that, but you don't think that you would actually know people that do that. We kind of protect ourselves in that way. It's a protective factor that we put on ourselves. And first it happened my senior year of college, and then the second one about a year out of college. Both males, both friends who I've known for a very, very long time. I look at these warning signs, and that's why I get emotional, because they checked a lot of these boxes. And what's really, really hard for myself and a lot of our friends is that we noticed this and we didn't ask about it. So when I talk about words like noticing and inviting, they mean a lot to me. You guys, you have to notice. Please, please, please notice warning signs, and please do not be afraid to invite yourself to ask someone if they are okay. It's so important. You know a lot about your kid. You're very intuitive. So if you just see the littlest bit of change in them, something that they do that's concerning you, there's nothing wrong about asking them if they're okay. And at the end of the day, they're going to go to bed knowing that my mom and dad care about me because they're asking if I'm okay. And that's huge. All right, so challenge yourself to take suicide seriously. So here are some statistics with suicide. 50% of persons who die by suicide never receive any form of help. People may not spontaneously report suicide ideation, but 70% communicate their intentions to family and friends. So again, it's as simple as, I don't want to be here anymore. There's nothing worth living for anymore. So they might not say outright, I'm going to take my own life, and use, certain sentences that resemble suicide ideation, but they'll talk about it in very subtle ways, but they will talk about it. 50% of people who die from suicide die as a result of their first try. Challenge yourself to ask the question, have you noticed change in the behavior? Have you reached out? Are you concerned? Ask questions. Okay, this is actually what got me, you guys. When I was going through the training of how to present this to parents, and we were just talking about suicide, talking about depression and anxiety, when the trainer told me to, you can ask kids, are you thinking of killing yourself? My eyes, I paused and I said, I can't ask someone that. I mean, I flat out said this to the trainer from Michigan. I said, I do not feel comfortable asking someone this. And they said, that's your right, you don't have to, but there are so many mental health professionals that stress this. Like, if your child has talked about inadvertently ending their life multiple times, and I don't want to be here anymore, I can't do this anymore, I just want to disappear. Sometimes it takes this question, literally looking directly at your child and asking, are you thinking of killing yourself? Where you're going to get a clear answer or not. Because how do you know if they actually are unless you ask this question? It's hard and shocking, and I still have a really hard time coming to terms with asking a child this. But again, I'm not a mental health professional. They are, and they really, really push. If you feel comfortable asking your child this, to do so. Ask if they have a plan. So usually the next step is you first ask, are you thinking about killing yourself? And then you ask, have you thought about how you're going to do it? And that's when you get a lot of answers out of your kids. If they have, they'll tell you how. They're not afraid to express that. They get to a point where they want to do it anyway, so if they tell someone about it, they don't think that they'll actually be stopped, so they don't mind sharing this information. Do not try to argue someone out of suicide. That's really big. A lot of mental health professionals say that the minute you try to change someone's plans, it almost makes them want to do it more. It's that retaliation, rebellion kind of thing. Let them know that you care. Let them know that they are not alone and they can get help. That is what you need to do. So instead of saying you can't do this, etc., say, I care about you. I want you here on this earth. You bring meaning and purpose to me and to your life. And I would really, really like to continue to have this conversation. So they can go to bed that night knowing that at least one person in their life actually cares and feels that way about them. That's changed the game. Just simple things to let them know that you care and let them know that they are not alone. I go out and I talk to students a lot about the sexual misconduct in teen dating, and the suicide rates for teenagers who have been in abusive relationships is really, really high. And so I always go to schools and talk to them about it, and one thing that I always say to you guys is, I look them in the eyes and I say, I don't have to say this to y'all, but every single person in this room deserves to be here. And every single person in this room deserves life and deserves to be happy. And just because someone has treated you bad in the past, I don't ever want you to question your existence here on this earth. And I don't have to say that to these kids, but I want to, just to remind them, because a lot of people feel that way, but no one's expressing that to them. So when kids know that they have purpose, they are worth something, they mean something, they add value to your life and other people's lives, it really can actually change your brain and the way that you think about yourself. So please build your child up. Always teach them and tell them how much you love them. It goes so far. So we want to challenge the stigma, find out why the individual is hesitating to talk about it, and address fear of embarrassment or shame, find solutions to concerns about paying for care. A lot of parents are concerned about, if I need to seek help or seek counseling, how expensive it might be or what the cost of it might be, but there's always going to be ways to get your kid the right kind of help with the least amount of money possible. Identify resources where they can find help. There's always hotlines, you guys, and when I go and talk about mental health with middle schoolers and high schoolers, I always give them the suicide hotline number. and I make them write down on a piece of paper and put it in their backpack, just in case they're feeling really sad one day and they need to reach out to someone and talk to someone objectively. They can call that number, and that person can kind of, talk them down and calm them down, bring them back down to earth a little bit. All right, you guys, so the last thing, empower, goes by quickly, I promise. So we want to empower yourself with knowledge around mental health, empower yourself with words, empower others with your support, empower your community with leadership, and empower others to make a change. Be positive role model and encourage others to join the movement. I know that y'all might not think many parents are here. This is a big crowd to me, because usually I don't get a lot of parents attendance in the mornings and nights. And so just the fact that y'all have taken time out of your day to be here and talk about mental health and get this education, you're empowering yourself. And you can also empower the community. It takes one person to make a difference. So if y'all can be the parents that push this positive message into the school and talk about how important it is to talk about mental health, y'all can make a really, really big difference. It's amazing. Empower you just to know protective factors, and I love protective factors. You guys know that I describe protective factors. Are there things in your life that better help you deal with stressful situations? So if you have access to services, if you're actually utilizing those services, being involved in activities, that's huge for kids. You guys, I love when kids have a sense of meaning or a sense of involvement. So if they're involved in sports or arts or in certain clubs at school that give them meaning, that can be a huge protective factor. Having supportive family members, having and seeking strong morals, just school connectivity is really, really large for these kids. Positive role models in their life, faith, religion, positive attitude and optimism, maintaining good boundaries, and then coping skills. These are all going to be really good protective factors. When I look back on my protective factors when I was growing up, I was like kind of that nerd that was really, really involved in school stuff. I was like the kid that ran around with all the books in their hand and was going from place to place to place. But I started a club at Kincaid where senior high schoolers mentor middle schoolers. That was important to me, and I took the initiative to start it. I loved being on the health and wellness committee, and so I really just kind of buried myself in a lot of really awesome school stuff that made me feel really connected to my community, made me feel like I was making a difference. And I had friends that went completely the opposite way, that were just totally bury themselves in sports or bury themselves in art, and it just made them feel like they belonged and that they had meaning outside just getting good grades and going to parties and being social. Like, you really want to have, your kid wants to have meaning, so we want to be able to find their little niche that they like. We also want to make sure that kids have really just positive and healthy self-esteem. They're assertive. This is huge, you guys. Assertive skills and just actually having meaning behind your words. Because what I talk to students when it comes to bullying, let's say a bully comes up to you in the hallway and starts picking on you, and then you don't really know how to be assertive back, and you say, hey, can you please stop, and I don't like when you do this, and you're very timid and shy about your words, and you're not very assertive. But if you look at someone and just say, stop treating me this way, please go away, that is assertive. And a lot of these bullies do not get that assertive language back at them. They know how to shame someone, belittle someone, and they never get that pushback. But if your child can be assertive and tell someone to stop and mean it, it can go a long way, and people might not pick on them as much. Social skills absolutely is huge. The ability to learn how to share, take turns, be a friend, enter into a group, regulate your emotion, manage anger, have a sense of humor, just good social skills in general. That's going to be a huge protective factor. And then just cooperation skills as well. Okay, we want to build on those protective factors. Having a friend, building relationships, self-awareness, and telling a trusted adult is always going to be that key part to the ending of the empowering section of this. Having an adult to confide in is the biggest protective factor for a young person's mental health. Again, relying on your trusted adults. And if your kid isn't talking to you, hopefully they're talking to somebody else. All right, you guys, so that was kind of the crash course on the Be Nice action plan. But at the end of the day, my biggest thing in just talking to students and knowing what their needs are is creating this positive environment at home where they feel safe. If they want to talk to you about anything, talk to you about a bullying situation, talk to you about what happened to them on social media, talk to you about that grade that they got, I want you to be able to create an environment where they just feel comfortable coming to you with anything, without you being judgmental. Being a good listener, hearing them, and actually helping them is huge. I've had a lot of students have come up to me in the past and said, Miss Jenna, I've been brave enough to tell an adult when I'm struggling, but that adult didn't believe me. Or that adult didn't really seem like they cared as to what I had to say, kind of just shooed me away and went on with their daily activities. If a child is reaching out to you, I don't care how far-fetched their story sounds, and it probably maybe isn't true, they're coming to you for a reason. There's some truth behind something as to why they're coming to you, so please continue to ask questions, get down to the bottom of why they're feeling this way, and just show them that you care. It's going to be huge for them. Thank you guys so much for just taking time out of your day to listen to this. I have handouts for y'all to take home, and I know it's a hard topic, and so we're probably all just kind of taking it in, but again, huge props to you guys. Y'all really can all make a difference, so thank you so much.